The scorching Egyptian sun beat down upon the slave auction as Pharaoh Amenhotep's golden chariot arrived, sending ripples of fear and reverence through the crowd. His eyes, cold and discerning, scanned the broken souls on display until they rested upon her, a young woman with defiant eyes that seemed to look through him rather than at him. Something stirred within his hardened heart, a recognition he could not name. With a single gesture of his bejeweled hand, she became his property, another possession among thousands. Yet as she was led away in chains, the mighty ruler felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. Could this humble slave somehow hold the key to filling the void that all his power and wealth had failed to satisfy? The royal procession wound its way through Thebes, the pharaoh's chariot leading while guards dragged Nefertari behind in chains. Citizens bowed low, eyes averted from their god-king. Only Nefertari dared to gaze upon the towering obelisks and temple facades that marked the approach to the palace complex. Upon arrival, a stern-faced overseer named Khemruset inspected her like cattle. "Another one for the servant quarters," he muttered, making a notation on a papyrus scroll. "Name?" "Nefertari," she answered, her voice steady despite her circumstances. Khemruset's eyebrow raised slightly at her clear pronunciation. "You will address me as master or remain silent." He unrolled the royal papyrus scroll further, recording her name with quick, practiced strokes. A royal attendant interrupted. "This one goes to the royal household, by Pharaoh's command." Khemruset's expression darkened. Pharaoh Amenhotep concerns himself with a common slave. His orders were specific. Nefertari was led through a labyrinth of corridors, each more opulent than the last. Wall paintings depicted Amenhotep in battle and before the gods, always towering over his subjects. Servants scurried about, keeping their eyes downcast. An elderly woman named Iset waited in a small chamber. "Remove those filthy rags," she ordered. "Pharaoh may have brought you from the mud, but you'll not soil these halls." As attendants scrubbed her skin raw, Nefertari's mind drifted to her father, a learned scribe who had served in the court of Mitanni before Egyptian forces had razed their city. He had taught her the forbidden arts of reading and mathematics, knowledge that no woman, much less a slave, should possess. "Why does he want this one?" Iset muttered, inspecting Nefertari's hands. "Not built for heavy labor, yet too old for certain entertainment." "I can work," Nefertari said. Iset struck her cheek. "You speak when spoken to. Remember your place." Later, dressed in simple linen, Nefertari was led to a vast chamber where Amenhotep reclined on a golden throne. Courtiers surrounded him like flies on honey, their elaborate wigs and jewelry marking their status. "Approach," Amenhotep commanded. The room fell silent. Nefertari walked forward, eyes properly lowered, but shoulders straight. She knelt at the prescribed distance. "You have unusual eyes for an Egyptian," he observed. "Where were you born?" "In Mitanni, Great One. Before it became part of your glorious empire." A murmur rippled through the court at her articulate response. The pharaoh leaned forward. "You speak well for a slave. My father served the royal house there as a scribe, divine one, and he taught his daughter the sacred arts." Skepticism colored his voice. Nefertari remained silent, aware that admitting such knowledge could mean death. "Answer truthfully," he commanded. He believed knowledge should not be confined by station or gender. Great Pharaoh. Gasps echoed around the chamber. A richly dressed noble stepped forward. "Such ideas are dangerous, Divine One. Perhaps the auction master misrepresented her value. I could take her off your hands." "That won't be necessary, Centifer." Amenhotep's voice was soft but final. "I find her interesting." That evening, Nefertari was assigned to the royal household, tasked with keeping the pharaoh's private chambers in order. As she arranged scrolls on his writing table, her fingers lingered on the hieroglyphics she had been forbidden to acknowledge she could read. One scroll remained partially open, revealing plans for a new temple. She noticed an error in the measurements that would cause the structure to be misaligned with the stars, an omen of disaster according to Egyptian belief. She carefully rolled it closed, placing it exactly as she had found it. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Knowledge is power, but revealing it at the wrong moment brings only danger. In the shadows of a connecting chamber, Amenhotep watched silently. Having entered unannounced, he had seen her eyes scan the hieroglyphics with comprehension, had noticed her reaction to the flawed measurements. Instead of announcing his presence, he withdrew, a plan forming in his mind to test just how much this slave truly knew. Dawn arrived with the shrill call of Isit, ordering the servants to their duties. Nefertari was assigned to dust the countless statues in Pharaoh's private study, a task reserved for the most trusted servants, as it put them near precious scrolls and state documents. "Touch nothing but what needs cleaning," Isit warned. "The Pharaoh will know if even a papyrus has been disturbed." Alone in the chamber, Nefertari worked methodically, carefully moving around the writing table where scrolls lay scattered. One had rolled partially open, revealing a message in a foreign script. She recognized it immediately, Hittite diplomatic correspondence, its meaning clear to her trained eye. The scroll contained veiled threats disguised as pleasantries. Without thinking, she reached for a clay tablet and stylus nearby, making quick notes about the true meaning hidden between the formal greetings. "What are you doing?" The voice from the doorway froze her in place. Peneb, the royal advisor, stood watching, with narrowed eyes. His jeweled collar marked his high position, his thin face set in perpetual suspicion. Nefertari set down the stylus. "Forgive me, master. The dust. You were writing." He crossed the room swiftly, snatching up the tablet. "These are notes on the Hittite message." His eyes widened. "You can read." "I was merely copying symbols I found interesting," she lied. "Do not insult my intelligence. These are translations." He gripped her arm painfully. "Who are you?" "A spy." "No, master. I am nothing. A slave. We shall see what the Pharaoh makes of this." Peneb dragged her from the chamber, the clay tablet clutched in his hand. Amenhotep was in the hall of audiences, listening to provincial reports. His eyes narrowed, seeing Peneb enter unannounced, Nefertari in tow. "Divine One, forgive the interruption." Peneb bowed low. "I discovered this slave writing translating the Hittite correspondence." Murmurs spread through the assembled nobles. A woman who could write was unnatural enough. A slave with such abilities was dangerous. Amenhotep gestured for the tablet. He studied it silently, his expression unreadable. "You understand Hittite?" he finally asked. Nefertari. She kept her eyes lowered. "Yes, Divine One." "And these observations about hidden meanings in their diplomatic language? My father served as translator in the Nitani court. He believed I should understand the world beyond our borders." The Pharaoh tapped the tablet thoughtfully. "Your father taught you well. These insights are accurate." Peneb's mouth fell open. "But Divine One, a slave with such knowledge is unexpected," Amenhotep finished, "yet potentially useful." He turned to Nefertari. "What other languages do you read?" "Akkadian, Babylonian, some Nubian dialects," she answered softly. "And mathematics? Astronomy?" "My father believed all knowledge was connected." "Great Pharaoh." Amenhotep's lips curved slightly. "Indeed." He returned to his throne. "Peneb, I wish to test the limits of this slave's education. Prepare appropriate examinations." "But Divine One," Peneb protested, "such knowledge in a woman, much less a slave. Are you questioning my judgment?" The Pharaoh's voice remained calm, yet the threat was unmistakable. Peneb bowed deeply. "Never, Divine One." Later, as the sun cast long shadows across the palace gardens, Nefertari was summoned to a small chamber where Amenhotep waited alone, the clay tablet before him. "You took a great risk," he said without preamble. "Knowledge cannot always remain hidden, Great Pharaoh. Like fire, it seeks air." He studied her thoughtfully. "Your father risked much to educate a daughter. he said. "Daughters, remember what sons forget." For the first time, Amenhotep smiled genuinely. "Tomorrow you will be tested. Penab hopes you will fail." And what does the divine Pharaoh hope? The question was bold, perhaps too bold. Amenhotep's eyes widened slightly at her directness. "I hope," he said carefully, "to discover the truth. If your knowledge is as deep as it appears, it would be wasteful to have you merely dusting statues." He dismissed her with a wave, but as she reached the doorway, he added, "Nefertari, be wary of showing your talents to others at court. Not all share my curiosity." That night, unable to sleep on her thin pallet, Nefertari traced hieroglyphics in the air above her. Tomorrow would determine her fate, death if she was deemed a threat, perhaps a different kind of prison if she proved useful. Neither offered the freedom she craved, yet knowledge had always been her true liberty. Morning arrived with Penab, personally escorting Nefertari to a secluded chamber within the palace. Sunlight streamed through narrow alabaster windows, illuminating a room arranged like a scribe's examination hall. 3 stern-faced men awaited, each representing different domains of knowledge. "Divine Pharaoh wishes to verify your claimed abilities," Penab announced, satisfaction evident in his tone. These tests were designed for royal scribes with years of training. Failure is expected. The first examiner, an elderly priest of Thoth, presented her with astronomical charts depicting the night sky. "Identify the celestial errors," he commanded. Nefertari studied the papyrus carefully. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "The stars are the gods writing upon the night sky. Learn to read their message." "The position of Supdat is incorrect for the season marked," she said. "And this constellation alignment would occur during inundation, not harvest." The priest's eyebrows rose slightly. He exchanged glances with his colleagues. The second examiner, a royal architect, unrolled plans for a temple complex. "Calculate the stone requirements." Nefertari took the offered stylus and tablet, working through calculations with practiced efficiency. "Approximately 12,000 limestone blocks for the outer walls, assuming standard royal cubit dimensions," she concluded. The architect studied her work, finding no errors to criticize. The third test came from a court physician who presented medical hieroglyphics. "Translate and explain." "A treatment for eye inflammation," she said without hesitation. "Copper mixed with honey, applied for 7 days while reciting prayers to Thoth." As the tests continued through midday, Penab's initial smugness faded to concern. By late afternoon, when they presented foreign texts, Nefertari translated Babylonian trade agreements and Hittite war declarations with equal facility. "Enough," Penab finally declared. "The pharaoh awaits our report." As they departed, the elderly astronomer priest lingered, studying markings visible on Nefertari's wrist, where her sleeve had risen. "Those symbols," he murmured. "Where did you receive such markings?" Nefertari pulled her sleeve down quickly. "Birth markings, nothing more. I have seen those patterns before, in very ancient texts." His gaze was penetrating. Texts concerning those who would bridge worlds and change the course of kingdoms. Before she could respond, Penab returned and led her away. Amenhotep received them in his private audience chamber, lounging on a cedar chair inlaid with gold. Only his most trusted advisors were present. "Well?" he asked Penab. "Divine One, I must report that the slave's knowledge is extensive." Penab's admission seemed physically painful. "She solved astronomical calculations that would challenge our temple priests. Her command of foreign languages is exceptional. And mathematics? Flawless, Divine One." Amenhotep's eyes found Nefertari's. "It seems your father's teachings were thorough. He believed education was the only inheritance he could provide, that could never be stolen," she replied. "A wise man." The pharaoh turned to the elderly astronomer. "Nachman, you wished to speak?" The old priest stepped forward. "Divine One." The markings on her arm matched symbols from the prophecy of Manetho, the ancient prediction of a foreign-born woman. whose knowledge would alter Egypt's course. Murmurs filled the chamber. Amenhotep's expression remained impassive. "Show me," he commanded Nefertari. Hesitantly, she revealed her wrist, where an unusual pattern of lines resembled a constellation. "These are birth markings," she explained. "My mother said they marked me as favored by the goddess Ishtar. In Egypt we would see the influence of Isis." Nachman noted, different names, same divine power. Amenhotep studied the markings in silence. Finally he spoke. "Nefertari will be assigned to assist my personal scribe. Her knowledge of foreign languages will serve Egypt's diplomatic interests." Peneb could barely contain his objection. "Divine One, placing a foreign slave in such a position of trust is my decision," Amenhotep finished, his tone brooking no argument. "Her quarters will be moved accordingly." That evening, Nefertari was led to a small but private chamber near the scribal offices. For the first time since her capture, she would sleep on a proper bed rather than a servant's pallet on the floor. As she settled into her new quarters, she traced the markings on her wrist that had caused such concern. Her father had always been fascinated by them, teaching her they were a sign of destiny. "The gods have marked you," he would say. "One day you will understand why." Standing at her window, gazing at the same stars she had correctly mapped earlier that day, Nefertari wondered if that understanding was finally beginning to unfold. Whispers followed Nefertari through the palace corridor. A month had passed since her elevation to the scribal offices, and her presence among the learned men of the court created ripples of discontent. Each morning she assisted the aged royal scribe Tammuz with diplomatic correspondence, her facility with foreign languages proving invaluable. "The Babylonian emissary claims their tribute is generous," Tammuz muttered, squinting at a clay tablet. "Can you make sense of these figures?" Nefertari studied the cuneiform. "They've used an outdated conversion system to exaggerate the value. The actual amount is nearly half what they claim." "Clever girl." Tammuz nodded appreciatively. "Note that for the pharaoh's evening briefing." From the doorway came a derisive snort. Merior, the high priest of Ammon, stood watching with thinly veiled contempt. His leopard skin cloak and shaved head marked his exalted status. "The Divine One indulges this arrangement," he said coldly, "but a woman interpreting sacred diplomatic texts. The gods must be appeased for such transgressions." Tammuz bowed respectfully. "The pharaoh finds her skills useful, high priest. Usefulness does not equate to righteousness." Maria's gaze lingered on Nefertari. "Remember your place, slave. Temporary favor is not permanent elevation." After he departed, Tammuz's knees sighed heavily. "The high priest wields considerable influence. Be wary of him." That evening, preparations for a diplomatic feast consumed the palace. Emissaries from across the known world would dine with Pharaoh Amenhotep. Nefertari, now dressed in the simple but respectable linen of a palace scribe, rather than slave rags, was instructed to observe from a discreet position, ready to interpret if needed. The great hall gleamed with oil lamps, as nobility and foreign dignitaries assembled. Amenhotep entered last, his golden regalia catching the light. His eyes briefly found Nefertari in her corner before he took his place at the head of the gathering. Servants brought forth wine in jeweled goblets. From her position, Nefertari noticed a server she had never seen before approaching the pharaoh. Something in his movements seemed rehearsed, unnatural. When he presented the special ceremonial goblet to Amenhotep, Nefertari caught the faintest whiff of bitter almonds, a scent her father had once warned signified certain deadly poisons. Without thinking of protocol or consequence, she moved swiftly across the hall. "Divine One," she called out, louder than she intended. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to her in shock at such an interruption. Amenhotep paused, the goblet halfway to his lips. "You forget yourself," he said quietly. "Forgive me, great pharaoh." She bowed deeply. "But the wine, I believe it may not be suitable for your divine taste." The high priest stepped forward, outrageous. "Guards, remove this slave." "Wait." Amenhotep's command froze everyone. "Explain yourself, Nefertari." She chose her words carefully. Perhaps the Divine One would prefer to have it tested first. "The vintage seems unusual." Understanding flickered in Amenhotep's eyes. He handed the goblet to his food taster. "Verify its quality." The taster took a small sip and collapsed almost immediately, his body convulsing violently before going still. Chaos erupted. Guards seized the unknown server, who fought desperately before being subdued. Amenhotep remained eerily calm amid the tumult, his gaze fixed on Nefertari. Later, after the hall had been cleared and the would-be assassin taken for questioning, Amenhotep summoned Nefertari to his private chambers. Paneb and several royal guards were present, their expressions grim. "How did you know?" Amenhotep asked without preamble. "The smell of bitter almonds." "Divine One, my father taught me to recognize it as a warning sign." "The assassin has confessed," Paneb reported. "He was hired, but died before revealing by whom." "A convenient death," Amenhotep observed coldly. His eyes returned to Nefertari. "You have saved my life. Again, I find myself in your debt. I did only what any loyal subject would do." "Great Pharaoh, loyalty from a former slave is unexpected." He studied her thoughtfully. "Yet twice now your foreign knowledge has served Egypt. Perhaps the gods sent you for a purpose." The following morning, court gossip centered on the assassination attempt and the slave girl who had thwarted it. Nefertari found her status subtly altered. Servants who had previously ignored her now acknowledged her presence with respectful nods. Only the high priest Maria's hostility remained unchanged, perhaps even intensified. As Nefertari passed him in a corridor, he gripped her arm painfully. "The pharaoh may trust you," he hissed, "but I see the truth. Foreign blood brings foreign loyalties. I will be watching for your inevitable betrayal." His words carried the weight of prophecy, but as he released her arm, Nefertari met his gaze unflinchingly. For the first time since her enslavement, she felt something long dormant stirring within her, not just the will to survive, but the courage to stand her ground. The morning mist still clung to the sacred lake as Amenhotep's royal barge approached the temple of Karnak. Dawn ceremonies would soon begin, but the pharaoh had commanded a private audience with the oracle beforehand. To the astonishment of his entourage, he had ordered Nefertari to accompany him. "Divine One, this is most irregular," Paneb protested quietly as they disembarked. "The inner sanctuary is forbidden to women, especially those of foreign birth." "Today it is not," Amenhotep replied simply. His golden pectoral gleamed in the early light, the sacred scarab at its center seeming almost alive. Priests lined the processional way, their heads bowed. Only the high priest Meriah dared to look directly at the pharaoh, and the woman who followed several paces behind. "The Divine One honors the temple," Meriah intoned, performing the ritual greeting. His eyes narrowed at Nefertari's presence. "But some things remain sacred and separate." "I seek the oracle's wisdom," Amenhotep stated, "and this woman's markings must be examined." Meriah's lips thinned to a bloodless line, but he bowed. As the living Horus commands, they proceeded through towering pillars carved with eternal scenes of the gods. Incense filled the air, sweet and heavy. At each doorway the priests fell away until only Amenhotep, Nefertari and Meriah continued into the sacred heart of Karnak. The oracle's chamber was small compared to the vast halls they had traversed. An ancient woman sat on a simple stone seat beside a pool of still water. Her eyes were clouded with blindness, yet she turned toward them as they entered. "The golden Horus comes seeking what he already knows," she said, her voice surprisingly strong, "and brings with him the answer to his unspoken prayer." Amenhotep approached and knelt, a gesture that shocked Nefertari. The divine king knelt before no one. "I seek understanding," he said simply. "Show me the marked one," the oracle commanded. Meriah reluctantly motioned Nefertari forward. The oracle's withered hands reached out, finding Nefertari's wrist with uncanny accuracy. Her fingers traced the constellation like birthmark. "Ah," she breathed, "the sign of Sopdet rising over foreign waters. The mark is ancient, older than the temples themselves. What does it mean?" Amenhotep asked. The oracle released Nefertari's wrist and reached instead for a small ivory box beside her. From it she withdrew an oracle bone yellowed with age. Inscribed upon it were symbols matching those on Nefertari's skin. The prophecy speaks of a foreign woman marked by the stars, who brings both blessing and upheaval to the Black Land. Where she walks, old structures fall, and new ones rise. What she touches turns to gold, but also to dust. The oracle's unseeing eyes seem to look through them all. She brings love to the mighty one, but at a price that will echo through generations. Meriah made a warding gesture. "Such prophecies are dangerous. Divine One, the gods ordain the natural order, men to rule, women to bear sons, foreigners to serve. The gods also send signs." Amenhotep countered. "This woman saved my life when your temple safeguards failed." The oracle's laugh was like dry leaves rustling. "You both speak truth, yet miss the greater truth. The marked one was neither sent to destroy nor to save, but to transform. What grows from this transformation depends on choices, yet unmade." She pressed the oracle bone into Nefertari's palm. "Keep this. It belonged to you before you were born." Returning through the temple complex, Amenhotep remained silent, his expression unreadable. Meriah walked ahead, his back rigid with disapproval. Nefertari clutched the oracle bone, its familiar symbols warming in her hand. As they approached the royal barge, Meriah finally spoke. "Divine One, the prophecy presents a clear danger. The marked woman must be careful, High Priest." Amenhotep interrupted. "Would you advise me to defy a prophecy sent by the very gods you serve?" "I advise caution. Foreign influences have toppled dynasties before. Then we shall be cautious." Amenhotep's tone ended further discussion. That evening, as the palace settled into night routines, Nefertari studied the oracle bone in the privacy of her chamber. The symbols matched her birthmark perfectly, a constellation her father had called the Queen's Crown. A soft knock interrupted her thought. A royal guard stood at her door. "The Divine One requests your presence in the garden pavilion," he announced. The night air carried the scent of lotus blossoms as Nefertari approached the secluded pavilion. Amenhotep waited alone, without his usual regalia, looking almost ordinary in simple linen. "The high priest believes you are a threat to Egypt," he said without preamble. "And what does the divine pharaoh believe?" Amenhotep gazed at the stars emerging above them. "I believe Egypt has survived for thousands of years, by adapting, not by fearing change." His eyes found hers. "But I also know that prophecies can be dangerous things, especially when powerful men fear them." He moved closer, his expression softening. "Be vigilant, Nefertari. Not everyone wishes to see what might bloom from this strange seed the gods have planted." A silver oil lamp cast gentle light across Amenhotep's private study as night descended over Thebes. The day's duties complete, the pharaoh had dismissed his attendants, all except Nefertari, whom he had asked to remain to discuss the implications of the oracle's prophecy. "Your thoughts seem troubled," Nefertari observed, noticing the furrow in his brow as he examined the oracle bone. "Prophecies are double-edged swords," he replied. "They reveal and conceal in equal measure." He gestured to a cushioned seat across from his own, an unprecedented invitation for someone of her station. "Tell me about your father." Nefertari hesitated, then sat carefully. "He was royal scribe to the king of Mitanni before Egypt's armies came, a learned man who believed knowledge belonged to all worthy minds regardless of birth." "And your mother?" "She died when I was young. My father said she was descended from priestesses of Ishtar." Amenhotep nodded thoughtfully. "That explains your unusual education. And the birthmark? My father believed it marked me for an extraordinary fate. A sad smile crossed her face. He died still believing that even as we were led away in chains. You speak of him with great love. He was all I had. She looked directly at Amenhotep. May I ask the Divine One a question? He seemed surprised but nodded. Why did you come to the slave auction that day? The question hung in the air, unexpectedly intimate. Amenhotep rose and walked to the window, gazing at the star-filled sky. I rarely attend such events, he admitted. That morning I woke from a dream I couldn't shake, a voice telling me to go, that something awaited me. He turned back to her. When I saw you, something resonated. I still don't understand it fully. The admission seemed to surprise even him. The silver lamp flickered between them, creating a small private world. Divine Pharaoh, when we are alone like this, he interrupted gently, you may call me Amenhotep. The informality startled her. That would be improper. Perhaps. But titles create distance, and tonight I wish to speak plainly. He returned to his seat. Do you know what burden a pharaoh carries? The weight of 2 lands upon your shoulders, she answered. Ruder than that, his voice softened. Loneliness. From birth I've been set apart, a living god among mortals, adored, feared, obeyed, but never truly known. Nefertari remained silent, recognizing the rare gift of such honesty. Even my wives and concubines see only the crown, never the man beneath it. His eyes met hers. But you look at me differently. Perhaps because I came from a land where kings were powerful men but not gods. He smiled slightly. Blasphemy. Truth, she countered gently. Instead of anger, amusement flickered across his face. You see, no Egyptian would dare speak so directly. The lamp burned lower as hours passed. They spoke of their childhoods, his confined within palace walls, groomed for divine kingship, hers spent traveling with her scholarly father, absorbing knowledge from many lands. They discussed philosophy, religion, the burden of expectations. What do you miss most about freedom? He asked suddenly. Nefertari considered this. The horizon, she finally answered. The knowledge that I could walk toward it if I chose. I've never known such freedom. Amenhotep admitted. My path was determined before my first breath. Do you resent it? I did once. He leaned forward, the lamplight catching the flecks of gold in his eyes. Now I see it differently. Power constrained is still power. I may walk a narrow path, but what I build along it will outlast the stars. Is that enough? The question hung between them, more intimate than any that had come before. Amenhotep's gaze held hers for a long moment. Until now it has been. His voice was barely above a whisper. The first light of dawn crept through the window, surprising them both. They had talked through the night, the silver lamp burning steadily between them. The court will be assembling soon, Amenhotep said, reluctance evident in his tone. As Nefertari rose to leave, he caught her hand, a gesture so unexpected she nearly pulled away. Thank you, he said simply. For what, divine Amenhotep? For seeing the man, not just the crown. She slipped from his chambers as the palace began to stir, knowing something fundamental had shifted between them. In her own quarters she found the oracle bone on her pillow, though she was certain she had left it in the pharaoh's study. A small papyrus note accompanied it, written in Amenhotep's own hand. Some prophecies we fulfill, others we create ourselves. The royal barge gleamed in the morning sun, its golden falcon prow catching the light as it prepared to depart. Amenhotep stood on the deck, overseeing final preparations for his journey to inspect the northern provinces. To the surprise of the court, he had commanded Nefertari to accompany the royal party as a translator for meetings with foreign traders. This is most irregular, Divine One, Penab murmured as they watched supplies being loaded. The northern governors may not understand her presence. They need not understand, Amenhotep replied. Only obey. As the oarsmen took their positions and the moorings were released, Nefertari felt a strange lightness. For 3 years she had been confined to Thebes, first as a slave, then as a palace scribe. Now, for the first time since her capture, she would see the broader world again. The royal barge led a procession of smaller vessels down the Nile, moving with the current. Amenhotep remained mostly in his canopied section at the center, attending to administrative matters with his officials. Nefertari stayed near the stern, watching the landscape unfold, farmers in their fields, fishermen casting nets, children waving from the banks. By midday, they had left the immediate vicinity of Thebes. During a brief stop to take on fresh water, Amenhotep approached where Nefertari stood, gazing at a distant temple on the riverbank. "The Temple of Hathor," he said, following her gaze. "Goddess of love, music, and foreign lands. We called her Ishtar in my homeland." Nefertari replied, "Different names for the same divine force. You still believe in your gods, despite your years in Egypt." She considered her answer carefully. "I believe the divine speaks in many tongues, divine one." A smile touched his lips. "A diplomatic answer. I am learning from a master of diplomacy." Their conversation was interrupted by a signal from the lead scout boat. Time to continue their journey. As they returned to the main channel, Nefertari noticed Amenhotep, watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. The afternoon passed pleasantly, the coolness of the river offsetting the heat of the day. As dusk approached, the captain began seeking a suitable mooring place for the night. They rounded a bend in the river where tall reeds grew thick along the bank. Without warning, small boats burst from the concealment of the reeds. River bandits, a rare but dangerous threat on the Nile. The royal guards rushed to defensive positions as crude arrows rained down on the deck. "Protect the divine one," Pemneb shouted as the royal guards formed a protective circle around Amenhotep. In the chaos, Nefertari found herself separated from the main group as bandits leaped aboard the royal barge. A guard fell nearby, his weapon clattering across the deck toward her. She grabbed it instinctively, backing toward the stern. Looking around frantically, she realized something the Egyptians had missed. This was no random attack. The bandits had targeted the royal barge specifically, ignoring the supply vessels. Their coordinated movements suggested military training. From her position, Nefertari could see a narrow gap in the reed beds, an escape route clear of attackers. No one was watching her. For the first time in 3 years, freedom lay within her grasp. She could slip overboard, swim to shore, and disappear into the gathering darkness. She hesitated, looking back toward the center of the barge, where Amenhotep and his guards were surrounded, fighting desperately. Their attackers were driving them into a tighter group. A classic ambush formation she recognized from her father's military histories. Decision made, Nefertari fought her way through the chaos toward Amenhotep. "Divine One," she called out. "It's a trap. They're herding you for easier targets." Amenhotep heard her warning. "Spread out," he commanded his guards. "Form a line, not a circle." The tactical shift momentarily confused the attackers. Taking advantage of their hesitation, Nefertari reached Amenhotep's side. "There's a gap in their formation toward the port side," she said urgently. "A counterattack there would break their strategy." Amenhotep nodded and relayed the instructions to his guard captain. The resulting maneuver caught the bandits by surprise, forcing them back. As the tide of battle turned, a lone attacker broke through, lunging at Amenhotep with a curved blade. Nefertari shouted a warning, but there was no time for him to react. Without thinking, she threw herself forward, deflecting the blow with her seized weapon. The momentum carried both her and Amenhotep backward, tumbling onto the deck. For one breathless moment, they lay tangled together as guards dispatched the final attacker. "You're bleeding," Amenhotep said, his voice tight with concern. A cut on her arm welled with blood where the blade had grazed her. "A small price," she answered, suddenly aware of their proximity. His arm steadied her as they rose. "You could have escaped in the confusion," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "I saw you looking toward the shore." Their eyes met in understanding. "Yes," she admitted. "Yet you stayed and saved my life again." His hand remained on her arm, the touch no longer that of a ruler to a subject. "Why?" Before she could answer, Penub approached with urgent reports of the aftermath, breaking the moment between them. But as Amenhotep turned to his duties, his gaze lingered on Nefertari with new awareness, and she felt something shift irrevocably in the balance between them. The return to Thebes was marked by whispers. Word of the river attack, and Nefertari's role in foiling it, had spread through the palace. Servants bowed respectfully as she passed. Scribes, who had once ignored her, now sought her opinions. Most telling of all was Amenhotep's decision to include her in his daily councils, seated not with the servants but among the advisors. A fortnight after their return, Amenhotep presided over a public audience in the Great Hall. Petitioners approached the throne with requests and disputes requiring royal judgment. Nefertari stood nearby, occasionally providing insights on matters involving foreign customs. When the final petitioner had been heard, High Priest Meria stepped forward, the sacred scarab seal hanging prominently on his chest. The hall fell silent, sensing the tension that had been building for weeks. "Divine One," Meria began, his voice carrying to the farthest corners of the hall, "I come before you with grave concerns shared by the priesthood of Ammon." Amenhotep's expression revealed nothing. "Speak freely, High Priest. The natural order established by the gods is being disturbed." Maria's gaze shifted pointedly to Nefertari. "A foreign woman sits among Egyptian advisors. Palace gossip speaks of unusual favor. Some even whisper of the prophecy, claiming this former slave fulfills ancient predictions." Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobles. Nefertari kept her eyes forward, her face a careful mask. Such elevation without proper testing threatens the divine balance. Meria raised his voice. "If this woman is truly favored by the gods as some claim, let her prove it through the ancient trials." The challenge hung in the air. The trials of the gods were rarely invoked, a series of dangerous tests traditionally used to confirm the divine appointment of high priests and occasionally pharaohs themselves. "You overstep, Meria," Amenhotep said quietly. "I speak for the priesthood, Divine One." Meria touched the scarab seal. The temples grow restless. Rumors spread among the people. To maintain harmony, this matter must be resolved according to ancient tradition. Amenhotep's fingers tightened imperceptibly on the arms of his throne. To refuse would risk religious unrest, something no pharaoh could afford. "And if she passes these trials," Amenhotep asked, "then all will accept that the gods favor her rise, regardless of her origins." Meria's thin smile held no warmth. "And if she fails, well, the gods will have rendered their judgment. The choice should be hers." Amenhotep turned to Nefertari. "You are not obligated to accept this challenge." All eyes turned to her. Nefertari understood the delicate balance at play. Refusing would undermine her position and Amenhotep's authority. Accepting meant facing trials designed to break body and spirit. "I accept," she said clearly, meeting Meria's gaze. "If my presence requires divine confirmation, I welcome the opportunity to receive it." Satisfied murmurs spread through the hall. Meria bowed, triumph briefly visible in his eyes. "The trials will begin at the next full moon. 3 tests, truth, courage, and wisdom. The temples will prepare." As the court dispersed, Amenhotep signaled Nefertari to follow him to a private antechamber. Once alone, his composed facade cracked. "This was unnecessary," he said, frustration evident in his voice. "I could have found another solution." "The high priest forced your hand skillfully," she observed. "To refuse would have appeared weak. These trials are not mere ceremonies, Nefertari. They were designed to test those prepared from birth for religious office, or to eliminate rivals through seemingly divine judgment. I understand the risk. Amenhotep stepped closer, lowering his voice. Do you? The trial of truth uses sacred herbs to induce visions that strip away all deception. Many lose their minds. The trial of courage has claimed numerous lives. The trial of wisdom has no single correct answer. The priests judge worthiness as they see fit. Then I must ensure they see me as worthy. Her calm belied the fear coiling in her stomach. This is my fault, Amenhotep said, turning away. I elevated you too quickly, too publicly. No, Nefertari surprised herself by touching his arm, bringing him back to face her. He recognized value where others saw only status. That is the mark of a true king. Something shifted in his expression. His hand moved to cover hers where it rested on his arm. I cannot show you special favor during the preparations. It would only strengthen Mera's position. I understand, but I can ensure you have access to the temple archives. Study the accounts of previous trials. Knowledge has protected you before, perhaps it will again. That evening Nefertari sat alone in her quarters, the reality of her situation settling heavily upon her. On her table lay a small golden scarab, a protective amulet delivered anonymously. Though the sender had left no message, the royal seal pressed into the accompanying wax told her all she needed to know. She held the scarab to the lamplight, watching its golden surface gleam. In her homeland, such an amulet would be considered a token of deep personal concern, perhaps even affection. Whether Amenhotep understood this cultural significance, she couldn't know. But as she placed the scarab beside her bed, she allowed herself to hope that perhaps he did. Dawn broke over Thebes as temple drums announced the day of the trials. For 28 days Nefertari had prepared, studying ancient texts, fasting and performing purification rituals under the watchful eyes of temple priestesses. Now dressed in simple white linen, she stood before the massive pylon gates of the Temple of Amun. A procession of priests emerged, led by Meria in his ceremonial leopard skin. Behind them walked Amenhotep, wearing the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, a rare appearance of full regalia signifying the event's importance. The supplicant comes before the gods to be judged worthy or unworthy. Meria intoned, 3 trials she must face: truth, courage and wisdom. Should she fail any, the judgment is final. Amenhotep's expression remained impassive, though his eyes briefly met Nefertari's. In that moment, she drew strength from the quiet confidence she saw there. I am ready, she stated. The trial of truth came first. Nefertari was led into a darkened chamber deep beneath the temple. At its center stood a golden ankh, the symbol of life illuminated by a single shaft of sunlight from an opening far above. Drink, commanded a priestess, offering a chalice of blue lotus infusion. Nefertari hesitated only briefly before accepting. The bitter liquid burned her throat. Almost immediately the chamber began to distort around her. The walls breathed, the ankh pulsed with inner light. Who are you? The question seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I am Nefertari, daughter of Senenmut, born of Mitanni. False, the voices hissed. Deeper truth. Who are you? Images flooded her mind. Her father teaching her forbidden knowledge, her mother's distant face, the chains of slavery. Amenhotep's eyes in the lamplight. I am, she struggled for words as the visions intensified. I am knowledge in a world that fears it. I am strength disguised as weakness. I am a bridge between worlds. And what do you seek? The question penetrated her defenses. What did she truly want? Freedom, power, revenge, home, she answered, surprising herself with the truth that rose unbidden. Not a place, but belonging, purpose, to build rather than destroy. And the Pharaoh? The voices pressed. What do you seek from him? Here was the trap, the question designed to expose ulterior motives. But the lotus draft permitted no deception, even to herself. His heart, she whispered, not his crown, not his power, just the man beneath the divinity. Silence fell. The visions receded gradually. When Nefertari's senses cleared, She found herself on her knees before the Ankh, which now glowed with a steady light. The priestess nodded once. She had passed. The trial of courage followed without rest. Nefertari was guided to the temple's sacred lake, where stepped stones formed a path across the water. Beneath the surface, the shapes of sacred crocodiles moved ominously. Cross to the island, Maria instructed, indicating a small shrine in the center of the lake. The path shifts with each step. Hesitation means death. Taking a deep breath, Nefertari stepped onto the first stone. As promised, the moment her weight settled, adjacent stones submerged while new ones rose elsewhere. She had to leap quickly to the next safe position. Halfway across, a stone tilted treacherously beneath her foot. She nearly fell, catching herself at the last moment as a crocodile lunged at the disturbance. The watching crowd gasped. From the corner of her eye, she saw Amenhotep step forward involuntarily before mastering himself. Steadying her breathing, Nefertari continued, leaping from stone to stone with growing confidence. When she finally reached the island shrine, even Maria could not conceal his surprise. Inside the small shrine, she found a golden ankh, identical to the one from the first trial. Taking it as instructed, she made the return journey with the sacred object held high, completing the second trial. The final test, the trial of wisdom, awaited in the temple's inner sanctuary. Here, before the massive statue of Amun, 3 identical boxes sat upon a stone altar. One contains divine blessing. Maria explained. One contains nothing. One contains a curse that will strike you dead if opened. Choose. No amount of study had prepared Nefertari for this. The boxes bore no markings, offered no clues. She approached slowly, aware of Maria's satisfied expression. He believed she would fail here, where chance played as much a role as wisdom. She examined each box carefully, then surveyed the sanctuary itself. On the walls, ancient hieroglyphics depicted the judgment of souls. In one scene, Thoth recorded divine verdicts using a golden reed pen. Understanding dawned. This wasn't a test of choosing correctly. It was a test of approaching wisdom itself. Nefertari knelt before the altar. Great Amun, I seek not to test the gods, but to honor them. Divine wisdom teaches us that true blessings come not from objects, but from actions worthy of the gods' favor. I choose none of these boxes, but instead offer the anchor I carried through danger as a symbol of my journey from darkness into light. She placed the golden ankh upon the altar. For a long moment, silence filled the sanctuary. Then, remarkably, Maria bowed his head. The supplicant has passed all trials, he announced, his voice carrying a mix of reluctance and respect. The gods have spoken. As Nefertari emerged from the temple into the sunlight, the waiting crowd erupted in cheers, but she sought only one face among the many. When she found Amenhotep's eyes, she saw in them not just approval or relief, but something far more valuable, pride, and perhaps even awe. The great hall fell silent as Amenhotep ascended the dais, the morning sun streaming through high windows to illuminate his golden regalia. 7 days had passed since the trials, days of whispered speculation throughout the palace. Nefertari had been sequestered in temple purification rituals, seen by none save the priestesses who attended her. Now she stood before the assembled court, no longer in the simple garments of a scribe, but dressed in fine linen befitting a noble. Round her neck hung a golden ankh, not the ceremonial one from the trials, but a new amulet bearing the royal seal. The gods have spoken through ancient trials, Amenhotep proclaimed, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. They have confirmed what we already knew, that wisdom and loyalty may come from unexpected sources. He gestured for Nefertari to approach the throne. She moved forward with measured steps, aware of every eye upon her. Even Maria watched from his position among the priests, his expression unreadable. Nefertari of Mitanni, Amenhotep continued, you have served Egypt faithfully. Your knowledge has protected the throne, your courage has proven true, and your wisdom has been confirmed by the gods themselves." From a cushion held by an attendant, Amenhotep lifted an object that drew gasps from the assembled nobles, a royal seal of office, carved from precious lapis lazuli. "I hereby name you Royal Advisor on Foreign Affairs, with authority to speak with my voice in matters of diplomacy and trade." The pronouncement hung in the air like thunderclap. Never had such a position been granted to a woman, much less one of foreign birth. Some courtiers exchanged glances of disbelief, others nodded in reluctant acknowledgement of her proven worth. "This seal grants you access to the royal archives and the right to be heard in all councils," Amenhotep explained, placing it in her hands. "Quarters befitting your new station will be provided in the East Wing, near the royal apartments." Nefertari bowed deeply, the weight of the seal heavy in her palms. "I will serve Egypt and the divine Pharaoh with every breath, every thought and every skill the gods have granted me." As the formal ceremony concluded, Nefertari was led by attendants to her new chambers, a spacious apartment with painted walls depicting peaceful scenes from Egyptian mythology. Fine furniture, a proper bed, and even a small garden terrace transformed her living conditions from merely comfortable to truly luxurious. "The Divine One instructed that your quarters should have a scholar's desk," explained the chief attendant, gesturing to an elegant writing table, positioned to catch the best light. "And this cabinet contains papyri and writing materials of the finest quality." Left alone to acclimate to her new surroundings, Nefertari stepped onto the terrace, breathing deeply of the fragrant garden air. From this height, she could see across the palace complex to the Nile beyond. For the first time since her enslavement, she felt something close to peace. A discreet knock interrupted her thoughts. Princess Sitamun, Amenhotep's sister, entered without waiting for permission. Though similar in age to Nefertari, her bearing conveyed generations of royal breeding. "So this is where my brother has installed his new advisor," Sitamun said, her gaze sweeping critically over the chambers, quite close to the royal apartments. "Princess," Nefertari bowed respectfully, "I am honored by your visit. Save your courtesies, I come with a warning." Sitamun moved closer, her voice dropping. "You may have charmed my brother and impressed the priests with your foreign tricks, but you remain an outsider. Egypt has endured for thousands of years because we protect what is ours. I seek only to serve. You seek far more," Sitamun interrupted. "I see how you look at him, and worse, how he looks at you. A royal advisor might be unprecedented, but at least it maintains proper distance. Should you aspire beyond that station, you will find Egypt less welcoming." Before Nefertari could respond, the princess departed as abruptly as she had arrived, leaving behind the lingering scent of lotus oil and unmistakable threat. That evening, Nefertari attended her first royal council as advisor rather than scribe. Seated at the table rather than standing in attendance, she felt the weight of resentment from some, cautious acceptance from others. When matters turned to a disputed trade agreement with Hittite merchants, she offered insights on their customs that clarified the misunderstanding. As the council concluded, Paneb, who had once viewed her with suspicion, nodded respectfully at her contribution. Returning to her chambers, Nefertari found a small papyrus scroll had been delivered in her absence. The handwriting was unmistakably Amenhotep's, the message brief. "The council chamber is filled with advisors who tell me what I wish to hear. Today, I finally heard what I needed to know. Your quarters please you." The personal nature of the inquiry, outside formal channels, carried significance beyond the simple words. As Nefertari penned a careful response, she recalled Sitamun's warnings. The princess had seen what Nefertari herself had been reluctant to acknowledge, that the feelings growing between herself and Amenhotep extended dangerously beyond proper bounds. Power had transformed her life from slave to advisor in mere months, but she understood, perhaps better than anyone in the palace, how quickly fortune's wheel could turn, especially when one reached towards something meant only for the gods. The desert stretched endlessly before the royal caravan, golden dunes rippling to the horizon under a merciless sun. 2 months had passed since Nefertari's elevation to royal advisor. Now she rode in a curtained litter among the officials accompanying Amenhotep to inspect new turquoise mines near the eastern borders. The miners report rich veins, Panab explained as they paused at a desert oasis. But the local Bedouin tribes have grown restless. Your presence will remind them of Egypt's strength. Amenhotep nodded, shielding his eyes to study the distant hills. We'll reach the mines by tomorrow if we maintain our pace. Nefertari approached, having been consulting with the expedition's guide. The Bedouin elder has sent word requesting an audience at the mines. I believe we can negotiate peaceful terms. You know their customs? Amenhotep asked. Their trading practices are similar to those I learned as a child. They value direct speech and personal honor above formal protocol. As they prepared to continue their journey, Nefertari noticed a subtle change in the air, a stillness, a shift in the wind's scent. Her father had taught her to read the desert's warnings. Divine One, she said urgently, we should seek shelter. A sandstorm approaches. The Egyptian guides looked skeptical, seeing only clear skies, but Amenhotep had learned to trust her instincts. How long do we have? 2 hours, perhaps less. There are ancient tombs in those cliffs. She pointed to distant rock formations. They would provide adequate protection. Amenhotep ordered the caravan to change course immediately. They had covered half the distance to the cliffs when the horizon darkened ominously. Wind gusted suddenly, whipping sand into stinging clouds. Faster, Amenhotep commanded, as visibility deteriorated rapidly. By the time they reached the cliff base, the storm had become a howling wall of sand. Guards located a tomb entrance cut into the rock face. The royal party hurried inside while servants struggled to secure the animals and equipment. In the chaos of blinding sand and roaring wind, Nefertari realized Amenhotep was no longer with the main group. Against all protocol, she fought her way back outside, wrapping her cloak around her face for protection. Amenhotep, she called, using his name without title in her urgency. A shape materialized from the swirling sand. Amenhotep, helping a fallen guard toward shelter. Nefertari rushed to assist, taking the guard's other arm. Together they staggered into the tomb entrance as the full fury of the storm descended. The others, Amenhotep asked. Once they had dragged the injured man to safety, the main party is deeper inside. Nefertari explained, gesturing toward the tomb's inner chambers. But half the guards and servants are still outside with the animals. We cannot reach them now. Amenhotep's voice was grim. This passage is our only shelter until the storm passes. They found themselves isolated in the tomb's antechamber, cut off from both the outside world and the main party further within. Ancient paintings covered the walls. Scenes of the afterlife faded by centuries. As hours passed and the storm showed no signs of abating, the injured guard developed a fever. Nefertari tended him with water from their limited supplies, while Amenhotep lit a small oil lamp he had carried. He needs proper care, she said, concern evident in her voice. We all need what we cannot have at present. Amenhotep settled beside her on the stone floor, his shoulder touching hers, a proximity that would have been unthinkable in the palace. Tell me about your homeland. The unexpected requests, spoken softly in the dim light, created an intimacy that transcended their isolation. As the storm raged outside, Nefertari described the green valleys of Mitanni, the mountain temples, the festivals of spring. You must miss it greatly. Amenhotep observed, I did for many years. She hesitated. Now I find myself divided. The heart can grow new roots, it seems. Their eyes met in the lamplight. For once, no titles or positions stood between them, just two people sharing confidences as the desert tried to reclaim the world outside. The prophecy. Amenhotep said suddenly, do you believe it concerns us? I believe we make our own fate, she answered carefully. Though sometimes the gods place markers on our path, Like a slave auction, I felt compelled to attend. A smile touched his lips, or a foreign woman who saves my life with alarming regularity, or a pharaoh who sees a person where others see only status. She matched his smile with her own. The guard moaned in his fever, breaking the moment. As Nefertari turned to attend him, Amenhotep caught her hand. From his robe he withdrew a small amulet, a protective eye of Horus crafted from lapis and gold. "I had this made for you before we left Thebes," he said, pressing it into her palm. "A poor gift compared to what you've given me." "And what have I given you, Divine One?" "Clarity," he answered simply, "and perhaps something I'd forgotten how to recognize: companionship without fear or agenda." As the night deepened and the storm's howl became their constant companion, Amenhotep spoke of his childhood, his fears, his hopes for Egypt's future. Nefertari shared her true lineage, her mother's connection to a royal house overthrown years before her birth. "So you are royal-born after all," Amenhotep mused. "The gods have a peculiar sense of humor, making a princess into a slave only to elevate her again." "Not quite a princess," she corrected, "but not quite a slave anymore either." "No," he agreed, his voice soft in the darkness. "Never again that." The council chamber bristled with tension as Amenhotep studied the papyrus before him. Reports from border garrisons indicated unusual troop movements along Egypt's northeastern frontier. Hittite forces were gathering in unprecedented numbers. Their diplomatic messages speak of peace while their armies prepare for war. Peneb observed grimly. A familiar pattern. Amenhotep turned to his generals. "What forces can we mobilize?" As the military men outlined their readiness, Nefertari studied the battle plans spread across the cedar table. The Hittite positions seemed oddly familiar, reminiscent of strategies she had seen before. "Divine One," she interrupted, drawing surprised looks from the generals, "may I examine the scout reports more closely?" Amenhotep nodded, and she moved to his side, analyzing the detailed accounts of enemy positions, supplies, and movements. "This is not a standard Hittite formation," she said finally. "These are Mitanni battle tactics, my people's traditional approach to desert warfare." "Impossible," objected General Horemheb. "Mitanni has been under Egyptian control for years." "Their military leaders were not all captured," Nefertari countered. "Some fled to neighboring kingdoms, taking their knowledge with them." She pointed to specific positions on the map. "These flanking maneuvers, the way they've positioned their chariots, these are signature strategies of General Tushratta, my father's cousin." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. "You're suggesting Mitanni military leaders are now advising the Hittites?" Amenhotep asked. "It explains the unusual formations and why our scouts find their movements confusing. They're expecting traditional Hittite tactics, not Mitanni strategies." Horemheb's eyes narrowed. "How convenient that you can read these intentions so clearly. Perhaps your loyalties remain with your birth nation." "My loyalties are with Egypt," Nefertari stated firmly, "and with the divine Pharaoh who gave me back my dignity when your soldiers took everything else." "Enough," Amenhotep commanded. "If Nefertari is correct, we face an opponent using unfamiliar tactics. That demands a response adapted to this new threat." For hours they reconstructed the enemy's likely strategy based on Nefertari's knowledge of Mitanni warfare. She explained the distinctive approach that prioritized mobility over direct confrontation, designed to exhaust Egyptian forces in extended desert campaigns. "Their weakness will be water," she explained. "Mitanni's strategies assume control of oases. If we secure these key points first, we force them to either retreat or attack at a disadvantage." As darkness fell and oil lamps illuminated the battle plans, Amenhotep made his decision. "We will deploy, as Nefertari suggests, secure the eastern oases immediately and position our main force here." He indicated a strategic plateau where we control the high ground and water supply. The council concluded, generals departing to implement orders. Only Nefertari remained with Amenhotep in the chamber. "You trust my assessment?" she asked quietly. "I trust you," he replied simply. "But I wonder, does it pain you to use your knowledge against your former homeland?" She considered this carefully. "Mitanni, as I knew it, no longer exists. Those who now use its military tactics do so in service to Egypt's enemies. My father taught me that wisdom serves life, not destruction. I use what he gave me to protect, not to harm." Amenhotep studied her face in the lamplight. "There may be Mitanni among the enemy forces, perhaps people you once knew." "Yes." Her voice held no hesitation. "But Egypt is my home now. My future lies here, not in the ashes of my past." Something shifted in Amenhotep's expression, a decision forming behind his eyes. "When this threat is resolved, we must speak of that future." Before she could respond, a royal messenger entered with urgent news. The Hittite advance had begun sooner than expected, their forces moving with surprising speed toward Egypt's border fortress. Through the night, Nefertari worked alongside the scribes, translating intercepted messages and helping coordinate Egypt's response. By dawn, Amenhotep's counter-strategy was in motion, forces deploying to the positions she had recommended. In a rare moment of quiet as the sun rose, Amenhotep found her alone on the palace balcony overlooking the eastern desert. "You should rest," he said gently. "You've done all you can for now." "As have you," she replied, noting the fatigue evident in his stance. "This is not the first time Egypt has faced invasion. It will not be the last." "No," she agreed. "But perhaps it is the first time a pharaoh has had an advisor who truly understands the enemy's mind." Amenhotep moved to stand beside her, their shoulders nearly touching as they gazed toward the distant horizon, where Egypt's army now marched. "More than an advisor," he said, his voice so low she almost missed the words. "Much more." The implications hung in the air between them, unspoken yet undeniable. As the first reports of successful Egyptian maneuvers arrived throughout the day, Nefertari found herself caught between triumph and trepidation. Her knowledge might save Egypt from invasion, but in doing so she had committed herself irrevocably to her adopted homeland, and to its divine ruler, whose gaze now held something far more dangerous than mere appreciation for her tactical insight. Victory celebrations echoed through Thebes. The Hittite forces had retreated after a decisive Egyptian triumph, their innovative tactics countered by Amenhotep's prepared response. Though they had not pursued the enemy beyond the borders, Egypt had demonstrated its strength and secured its frontier. In the month following the victory, Nefertari's status rose further. Nobles who had once dismissed her now sought her insights. Even General Horemheb had grudgingly acknowledged her contribution to the military success. Only High Priest Merier maintained his cold distance. His influence had diminished somewhat after Nefertari's triumph in the trials. But the Temple of Amun remained a powerful force in Egyptian politics. Late one evening, as Nefertari finished organizing diplomatic correspondence in the royal archives, a young priest approached her chamber. He bowed nervously, glancing over his shoulder before speaking. "Advisor Nefertari, I bring information that cannot be spoken in the open palace." She invited him inside, curious but cautious. "What troubles you so deeply, priest?" "I serve in the inner temple," he explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "3 nights ago, I witnessed something disturbing. A messenger arrived after midnight. Not Egyptian, but Hittite, disguised as a merchant. He met with the high priest in secret." "You're certain of this?" "I recognized the dialect when they spoke briefly in the corridor." The man carried this. He withdrew a small clay seal impression from his robe. "I found it dropped near the sanctuary. The symbol is Hittite." Nefertari examined the seal carefully. "Why bring this to me, and not directly to Pharaoh? The high priest's supporters are everywhere." "I feared," he left the implication hanging. "But you have proven yourself to Egypt, despite your foreign birth. I thought perhaps you would understand the danger of divided loyalties." After the young priest departed, Nefertari contemplated her next move. Accusations against the high priest could not be made lightly. She needed more evidence. For 3 days, she observed Maria carefully during court functions, noting his interactions and movement. On the 4th evening, she followed him discreetly as he left the temple, tracking him to a nondescript house near the river. Waiting until he departed, she approached the dwelling and identified herself to the startled servant who answered her knock. Her royal seal granted her immediate entry. Inside, she discovered correspondence hidden beneath a loose floorboard, letters bearing the same Hittite seal the young priest had shown her. The contents confirmed her worst fears. During the recent conflict, Maria had provided detailed information about Egyptian defenses to the enemy. More disturbing still, the latest letter outlined plans for Amenhotep's assassination during the upcoming festival of Opet. Securing the evidence, Nefertari hurried back to the palace. She found Amenhotep in his private garden, enjoying a rare moment of solitude. "Divine One," she began. Then, seeing they were truly alone, amended, "Amenhotep, I must show you something of grave importance." He listened intently as she explained her discovery, examining the treasonous correspondence with growing anger. "We must move carefully," he said finally. "Maria's influence runs deep through the priesthood. Confronting him without proper preparation could spark religious unrest." "The festival is only days away," Nefertari reminded him. "If these assassination plans are genuine, they will fail," Amenhotep assured her. "But we must catch him in the act to ensure his guilt is undeniable." They devised a strategy to monitor Maria closely while maintaining the appearance of normal festival preparations. Royal guards were discreetly positioned throughout the temple complex. Amenhotep's food and drink would be secured under trusted supervision. On the eve of the festival, Nefertari worked late in the archives, organizing final details of their plan. A noise at her door drew her attention. Maria stood in the entrance, his expression unreadable. "Working so diligently for your adopted homeland," he observed. "How touching." "Egypt has been generous to me," she replied carefully. "I serve it with my full devotion." "Indeed," he moved into the chamber, the door closing behind him. "You've risen remarkably high for one who began as a slave, higher perhaps than is wise. The gods have guided my path, as confirmed by your own trials." His laugh held no humor. "The gods, or your own ambition?" He moved closer. "I wonder what the divine Pharaoh would think if he knew you had been investigating his trusted high priest." The realization hit her. He knew she had discovered his treachery. Her hand moved subtly toward the dagger concealed in her writing table. "Step away from her, Mary." Amenhotep's voice cut through the tension as he entered from a connecting chamber. Royal guards appeared behind him. Maria's face contorted with rage. "You dare to spy on the voice of Amun? I dare to protect Egypt from traitors," Amenhotep countered. "The evidence of your correspondence with Egypt's enemies is damning." With unexpected swiftness, Maria drew a hidden blade from his robes, lunging not at Amenhotep, but at Nefertari. "Foreign witch, you've poisoned his mind against his own people." She deflected the blow with her writing tablet, the blade splintering the wood. As they struggled, guards rushed forward, but Maria fought with desperate strength. "She is the true enemy," he shouted. "A Mitanni spy who has bewitched the Divine One." The dagger came perilously close to Nefertari's throat before Amenhotep himself intervened, seizing Maria's arm and forcing him to drop the weapon. As the guards restrained the high priest, Amenhotep's face was a mask of cold fury. "You will answer for your crimes against Egypt and for this attack on my most trusted advisor. She has turned you against your own," Maria spat. "The temples will never accept this foreign influence. The temples serve Egypt," Amenhotep replied, "as you have failed to do." Later, as physicians treated the shallow cut on Nefertari's arm, Amenhotep sat beside her, his concern evident. "You risk too much," he said quietly. "For Egypt," she replied, "and for you, they have become the same in my heart." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining in a gesture that transcended the bounds of pharaoh and advisor. Then perhaps it is time we acknowledge what has grown between us before the gods and before Egypt. The palace gardens glowed with the golden light of sunset, lotus blossoms closing as evening approached. Meria's trial had concluded days before, his crimes against Egypt proven beyond doubt. The evidence Nefertari discovered had exposed not just his treachery, but a network of conspirators reaching into several noble houses. Amenhotep had handled the crisis with measured justice, punishing the guilty while preventing the scandal from undermining religious authority. A new high priest had been appointed, one known for his moderation and scholarship rather than political ambition. Through it all, Nefertari had maintained her composure, attending councils and continuing her duties despite the whispered recognition that she had saved Egypt twice now, first from military defeat, then from internal betrayal. She stood near the garden pool, watching fish glide beneath water lilies when a royal attendant approached. "The Divine One requests your presence in the Western Pavilion," he announced, bowing deeply. The Western Pavilion, a private sanctuary rarely used for official business. Nefertari's heart quickened as she followed the attendant through flowering arbors to the secluded structure overlooking the Nile. Amenhotep waited alone, dismissed his guard as she approached. Gone were the elaborate royal regalia and formal crown. He wore simple linen, a single gold band around his brow, the only sign of his station. "Thank you for coming," he said, his formal tone belied by the warmth in his eyes. "Divine One, Amenhotep," he corrected gently. "Here, at this hour, I would be just a man speaking to a woman." She nodded, understanding the significance of his request. "Amenhotep," he gestured to the river beyond, where the setting sun cast the water in shades of fire. "Beautiful, isn't it? I've watched this same sunset thousands of times, yet never truly saw it until recently. What changed?" "I did." He turned to face her fully. "Or rather, you changed me." The directness of his statement hung in the air between them. For months they had navigated the growing connection between them with careful words and measured gestures. Now it seemed the time for such caution had passed. "From the moment you stood before me at that slave auction, something within me recognized something within you," he continued. "Not your knowledge or your courage, though both have proven remarkable, but something deeper, a kindred spirit perhaps." "I felt it too," she admitted softly, "though I feared to name it." "As did I." He stepped closer. "A pharaoh's life is not his own. Every choice, every alliance is weighed for its benefit to Egypt. Personal desire has no place in such calculations. I understand that better than most." Nefertari said, "My position remains precarious, despite everything. The court would never accept. The court will accept what I decree." Amenhotep interrupted, a flash of the divine ruler surfacing briefly. Then his expression softened again. "But that is not why I asked you here." He reached into a small chest beside him and withdrew an object that caught the dying sunlight, a ring of pure gold set with a blood-red ruby of extraordinary size. "This belonged to my grandmother," he explained. "Not her official royal jewelry, but a personal treasure given to her by my grandfather when they were young, before duty and station complicated their lives." Nefertari's breath caught as he held it toward her. "I have wives chosen for political advantage, concubines selected for beauty and noble birth," he continued. "But in 4,000 years of Egyptian history, no pharaoh has ever had a partner chosen solely for the connection of mind and spirit." "Amenhotep, let me finish, please." His voice held a gentle urgency. "I do not offer you a traditional place in my household. What grows between us deserves something new, something that honors both who you are and what you mean to me." He took her hand, the touch sending warmth through her despite the evening's growing coolness. "Nefertari of Mitanni, who became of Egypt through her own merit. I offer you not a position but a truth, that you have become essential to me, not just as advisor or friend, but as the keeper of my heart." The ruby ring glinted between them, neither offered nor withheld, but presented as a question, "The court will object," she whispered, though her fingers trembled toward the ring. "The priests, the nobles, even your family, they have objected to everything about you from the beginning," he reminded her with a small smile. "Yet here you stand, having proven them wrong at every turn. This is different. A foreign-born woman sharing a pharaoh's heart is exactly what the prophecy foretold." He closed the distance between them. A woman marked by stars who would bring transformation. Egypt has survived for millennia by adapting, not by fearing change. The last light of day illuminated his face as he gazed at her, all pretense of divinity stripped away. "I ask not as Pharaoh, but as a man who has found something he never thought possible, someone who sees beyond the crown to the person beneath." Nefertari looked from the ring to his eyes, finding in them not command, but question, vulnerability she had never before witnessed in the divine ruler. "Yes," she whispered, her voice steady despite the enormity of the moment. "Yes, Amenhotep." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, he drew her closer. For the first time, with the dying sun as their only witness, the pharaoh of Upper and Lower Egypt kissed the woman who had journeyed from slave to beloved, their lips meeting not in the union of ruler and subject, but as equals joined by something even more powerful than divine decree. Whispers spread through the palace like fire through dry reeds. Though neither Amenhotep nor Nefertari had made a formal announcement, the ruby ring upon her finger and the increasing intimacy of their interactions told their own story. Court factions formed, some expressing cautious support, others voicing outrage at this unprecedented development. Princess Sitamun led the opposition, gathering discontented nobles and priests loyal to Meria's faction. In hushed meetings, they spoke of foreign corruption and divine displeasure. The imprisoned high priest's warnings now seemed prophetic to those who had resisted Nefertari's rise from the beginning. "My brother has lost his reason," Sitamun declared to her inner circle. "This foreign woman has bewitched him, turned him against tradition. We must act before her influence becomes irreversible." As dawn broke over Thebes, Amenhotep met with his closest advisors to discuss growing tensions. Nefertari sat at his right hand, the ruby catching the morning light. The temple factions remained divided. Paneb reported, "The new high priest maintains order, but Meria's supporters agitate among the lower priesthood." "And the military?" Amenhotep asked. "General Horemheb keeps his counsel, but his officers respect Nefertari since the Hittite victory. They will follow your commands." A commotion in the corridor interrupted their discussion. Guards rushed in, their expressions grim. "Divine One, there's been an uprising at the prison temple. The former high priest Meria has escaped, along with several other prisoners." Amenhotep rose immediately. "Secure the palace, double the royal guard. No one enters or leaves without my direct order." As the Osul dispersed to implement security measures, Nefertari touched Amenhotep's arm. "This is my fault. My presence beside you has given his supporters cause." "No," he countered firmly. "This was inevitable. Meria's ambition was always greater than his devotion. Your presence merely revealed what already festered." Throughout the day, reports arrived of unrest in the city. Temple supporters of Meria clashed with royal guard. Rumors spread among the populace, wild tales of foreign sorcery and divine displeasure. As night fell, Amenhotep ordered Nefertari to remain in her chambers with trusted guards. "Until we locate Meria, you remain his primary target." "I should be with you," she protested. "My knowledge could help anticipate his movements." "Your safety matters more than your counsel tonight." His voice softened. "Please, Nefertari, I cannot focus on securing Egypt if I fear for you." Reluctantly she agreed, retiring to her quarters under heavy guard. Sleep proved elusive as she listened to distant shouting from the city below. Near midnight, a familiar voice at her door startled her fully awake. "Royal advisor, quickly," urged Paneb. "The Divine One requires your presence." The guards admitted him, and Nefertari rose immediately. "What's happened?" "Rebels have infiltrated the West Wing. The pharaoh is securing the sacred regalia and royal seals." He sent me to bring you to him through the hidden passages. Something in Parnab's manner, a slight hesitation, an unusual tension triggered Nefertari's suspicion. When did you last speak with the Divine One? Just moments ago, Parnab replied smoothly. We must hurry. Nefertari moved toward her writing table, as if gathering her things, then suddenly grabbed a hidden dagger. Amenhotep never calls the royal artifacts regalia. That term is foreign to Egypt. Who sent you, Parnab? His expression hardened. Clever, as always. The princess was right about your dangerous intelligence. Before he could say more, the door burst open. Princess Sitamun entered, flanked by armed men wearing temple guardian insignia rather than royal guard uniforms. You've ruined everything, Sitamun hissed. My brother was a great pharaoh until you corrupted him with foreign ideas and witches' charms. Where is Amenhotep? Nefertari demanded, gripping her dagger tightly. Fighting for his throne and his sanity, Sitamun replied. Meriah has opened his eyes to your manipulation. Soon all Egypt will know you for what you are, a foreign agent who seduced their divine ruler for power. You're the traitor, Nefertari countered. Conspiring with a proven enemy of Egypt. I conspire to save Egypt. Sitamun's composure cracked. Take her, alive, but silenced. My brother must be made to see reason. The temple guardians advanced. Nefertari backed toward the terrace doors, knowing she was outnumbered. As the first man lunged for her, she slashed with her dagger, drawing blood. The others closed in. A thunderous crash from the corridor halted everyone. Royal guards poured into the chamber, led by Amenhotep himself, sword drawn. An unprecedented sight for the divine ruler, who typically left physical combat to his soldiers. Sitamun, his voice carried the full weight of pharaonic authority. What madness is this? The princess straightened, unrepentant. I act to save you, brother. This foreign witch has clouded your judgment. By conspiring with a proven traitor, Amenhotep's tone was ice. By attacking the woman who twice saved Egypt. And me, she's turned you against your own blood, Sitamun insisted. Can't you see? Her words cut off as one of the temple guardians suddenly lunged. Not at Nefertari but at Amenhotep, a concealed dagger flashing in the lamplight. Nefertari cried out a warning, throwing herself between them. The blade meant for the pharaoh sliced across her shoulder as royal guards subdued the assassin. The broken dagger clattered to the floor, its distinctive curved shape marking it as Hittite craftsmanship. Meriah's final gift from his foreign masters. Amenhotep observed coldly, supporting Nefertari with one arm while pointing at the weapon with his free hand. Now all can see where true treachery lies. As Sitamun and her conspirators were taken away, Amenhotep guided Nefertari to a seat, examining her wound with gentle hands. You placed yourself before a blade meant for me, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Again, always, she replied simply, wincing as he pressed a cloth to the bleeding cut. The palace is secure, reported the guard captain. Meriah has been recaptured. The rebellion is crushed. Amenhotep nodded, but his focus remained on Nefertari. Summon the royal physician immediately. As attendants hurried to obey, he knelt beside her, heedless of protocol or propriety. When I heard fighting from your chambers, I thought he couldn't finish the sentence. I am not so easily removed from your side, she assured him, managing a smile despite the pain. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining over the ruby ring. No, you are not. And after tonight, no one will ever again attempt to separate us. The Grand Hall of Audiences stood prepared for an unprecedented gathering. At Amenhotep's command, representatives from every noble house, temple, and military division had been summoned to the palace. Foreign emissaries, too, had been invited, an unusual inclusion that sparked speculation throughout Thebes. 2 weeks had passed since the failed uprising. Meriah and his closest conspirators awaited judgment in the palace prison. Princess Sitamun had been confined to a remote estate, her role in the plot acknowledged, but her royal blood sparing her from harsher punishment. Nefertari's wound had healed well under the royal physician's care. Throughout her recovery, Amenhotep had visited daily, often lingering until late evening in private conversation. The ruby ring remained on her finger, a silent declaration of his intentions that the court could no longer ignore. Now, as noon approached, she stood in her chambers while attendants dressed her in garments befitting not a royal advisor, but something far more significant. The fine linen gleamed with gold thread, a pectoral of lapis and carnelian adorned her throat. The Divine One requested these final touches. The chief attendant explained, presenting a small chest containing a delicate golden crown, not the formal headdress of Egypt's great royal wife, but something unique, combining elements of Egyptian and Mitanni design. Nefertari's hands trembled slightly as she regarded it. "This is crafted by the royal jewelers according to the pharaoh's exact specifications," the attendant confirmed. He supervised every detail personally. When Nefertari finally entered the great hall, a hush fell over the assembled dignitaries. She moved with measured steps to her designated position near the throne, aware of the assessing gazes following her progress. Some faces showed open hostility, others cautious acceptance, and a few, particularly among the military officers who had witnessed her contributions during the Hittite crisis, displayed genuine respect. Trumpets announced Amenhotep's arrival. He entered wearing full ceremonial regalia, the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, the crook and flail of divine authority, golden sandals that marked each step as sacred. Yet despite these symbols of untouchable divinity, his eyes sought Nefertari's immediately, a moment of human connection amid the formal pageantry. "People of Egypt," he began, once seated upon the golden throne, "representatives of nations near and far, I have gathered you to witness a declaration that will shape Egypt's future." He recounted the recent threats Egypt had faced, the Hittite invasion attempt, and the internal conspiracy, and how both had been thwarted with Nefertari's assistance. Many in the audience shifted uncomfortably as he detailed Mary's treachery and the evidence of foreign collusion. "Twice now this woman has saved Egypt from destruction," Amenhotep continued, "not through accident or mere loyalty, but through exceptional wisdom, courage, and devotion to her adopted homeland." He gestured for Nefertari to approach the throne. As she knelt before him, the hall remained silent, the tension almost palpable. "Rise," Amenhotep commanded, but then added softly, meant for her ears alone, "For the last time you shall ever kneel before me." When she stood, he too rose from his throne, an unprecedented gesture that sent murmurs rippling through the crowd. Taking her hand in his, he turned to address the assembly. "The gods sent this woman to Egypt, first as a humble slave, then as a trusted advisor. Now they reveal their final purpose." His voice carried to every corner of the vast hall. "I declare before all Egypt and the watching world that Nefertari shall be my queen, not merely a royal wife, but my true partner in rulership." The pronouncement hung in the air like thunder. Some nobles gasped audibly. Others exchanged alarmed glances. The foreign emissaries leaned forward with sudden interest, recognizing the diplomatic implications of such a union. "Divine One," the new high priest stepped forward, his expression troubled. "While all respect the royal advisor's contributions, tradition dictates that Egypt's queens must be of royal Egyptian blood. Traditions evolve when the gods demand it," Amenhotep replied firmly. "And Nefertari's blood is indeed royal, a fact now confirmed by emissaries from her homeland." At his gesture, a dignified man in Mitanni dress stepped forward from among the foreign representatives. "I am Tushrata, brother to the late king of Mitanni," he announced. "The woman you know as Nefertari is my cousin's daughter, Princess Tadukhepa, believed lost during the wars between our kingdoms. Her royal lineage is beyond question." This revelation sent a fresh wave of murmurs through the hall. Nefertari herself appeared momentarily startled. She had known of her noble connections, but not of such direct royal lineage. Amenhotep raised his hand for silence. "Even without this confirmation, my decision would stand. Egypt has always been strengthened by embracing the best of other lands, their knowledge, their arts, their people. In Nefertari we gain not just a queen of royal blood, but one whose mind and heart have proven their worth to Egypt time and again. He turned to her, his public mask slipping just enough to reveal the man beneath the divine ruler. Will you accept this crown and stand beside me, not behind me, as we guide Egypt into a new era? The crown bearer stepped forward, presenting the unique diadem that combined both their heritages. The entire assembly held its breath, aware they were witnessing a moment that would be recorded in temple walls for eternity. Nefertari's voice, when she spoke, carried the quiet confidence that had first drawn Amenhotep's attention at the slave auction so many months before. I accept this sacred trust, she declared, not for power or position, but for Egypt, and for the man who saw value in a slave when others saw only property. As Amenhotep placed the crown upon her head, a single voice called out from the back of the hall. The ancient oracle, rarely seen outside her temple sanctuary, had appeared unannounced. The prophecy fulfills itself, she proclaimed, her blind eyes seeming to see beyond the physical world. The star-marked one rises, and with her, Egypt enters its golden age. The temple of Hathor gleamed with golden light as dawn broke over Thebes. For 7 days the city had prepared for an unprecedented royal ceremony, not merely a wedding, but the formal elevation of a foreign-born woman to Queen of Egypt. Amenhotep had decreed a new kind of union, one that would honor both their pasts, while creating something entirely new. In her preparation chamber, Nefertari stood motionless as attendants applied the final touches to her appearance. The royal wedding garments combined traditional Egyptian elements with subtle details from her Mitanni heritage, symbols of two cultures uniting rather than one conquering the other. You look every inch a queen, observed Tushratta, her newly discovered royal uncle who had remained in Thebes after confirming her lineage. Your father would be proud to see this day. I wish he had lived to witness it, she replied softly. He believed education would be my path to freedom. He never imagined this outcome. Perhaps he did, Tushratta suggested. The birthmark you bear, the constellation pattern, has been associated with royal destiny in our family for generations. He may have sensed what the gods intended for you. A priestess entered, signaling it was time. As Nefertari moved through the temple corridors, memories of her journey flooded her mind. The slave auction where Amenhotep first saw her, the tests that proved her knowledge, the dangerous trials she had survived, and the quiet moments when Pharaoh and advisor had gradually discovered something more valuable than power between them. The ceremony space opened before her, breathtaking in its splendor. Columns festooned with lotus blossoms framed a pathway strewn with petals. High-ranking nobles lined the route, many who had once dismissed her now bowing respectfully as she passed. At the altar stood Amenhotep, resplendent in ceremonial attire, yet wearing not the formal crown of state, but a simpler diadem matching her own. Another symbolic choice indicating this was a union of equals, despite his divine status. Their eyes met across the distance, and the formal solemnity of the occasion briefly gave way to something more personal, a shared recognition of the improbable path that had led them here. The high priest began the traditional invocations, calling upon the gods to witness and bless the union. When the moment came for the exchange of vows, however, Amenhotep raised his hand, departing from the ancient script. Today we not only unite two people, but forge a new tradition for Egypt, he declared, his voice carrying throughout the temple. For 4,000 years, pharaohs have taken wives for political advantage or dynastic continuation. Today I take a queen for her wisdom, her courage, and her heart. He turned to Nefertari, speaking now as if they were alone despite the hundreds of witnesses. You came to Egypt in chains, yet your spirit remained free. You served with loyalty though you had every reason for resentment. You risked your life repeatedly for a land not your birth home. His voice softened, and somewhere along that journey, you awakened in me something I had never expected to find. the man beneath the divine office. Nefertari's response came not from formal training but from her heart. I stand before you having traveled from slave to queen, a journey made possible by your willingness to see beyond station and tradition. You gave me dignity when others saw only use. You valued my mind when others feared it. You opened your heart when wisdom counseled caution. She took his offered hands in hers. I pledge not just loyalty to Egypt and its pharaoh, but partnership to the man I have come to love. A love born not from duty or command, but from true recognition of spirit. The high priest presented the Unity Papyrus, a document Amenhotep had commissioned, containing a new law regarding royal marriages. Breaking with 4 millennia of tradition, it formally recognized love as a legitimate basis for royal union, equal to political or dynastic considerations. As they both pressed their seals into the fresh wax, Amenhotep leaned close to whisper, "With this we change Egypt forever, for the better," she replied softly. The remainder of the ceremony followed ancient traditions, the exchange of symbolic gifts, the binding of hands with golden cord, the offering of wine to the gods. Yet throughout, subtle elements acknowledged Nefertari's heritage alongside Egyptian customs, creating something new from the union of different worlds. When at last they were proclaimed united before gods and mortals, Amenhotep did something no pharaoh had done in recorded history. He kissed his queen before the assembled witnesses, a public display of affection that transformed the divine ruler into something recognizably human in that moment. As they processed from the temple to begin the 7 days of celebration that would follow, Nefertari caught sight of the elderly oracle standing among the temple columns. The blind woman smiled knowingly, as if seeing beyond the ceremony to the consequences that would flow from this unprecedented union. That evening, as celebrations continued throughout Thebes, Amenhotep led Nefertari to the palace's highest terrace. Below them the city glittered with thousands of lamps. Above, stars wheeled in patterns unchanged since the first pharaohs ruled the Black Land. "From here we can see all of Thebes," Amenhotep observed, his arm around her waist. "And they can see us," Nefertari noted, indicating the crowds that had gathered in the distance, watching the royal couple's silhouette against the night sky. "Good," he replied. "Let them see that Egypt's strength comes not from rigid tradition, but from embracing the best of all worlds." He traced the constellation-shaped birthmark on her wrist. "The stars themselves marked you for this destiny." "Not destiny," she corrected gently. "Choice. At every turn, we chose this path together." As darkness deepened, and the first light of dawn approached on the horizon, Pharaoh and former slave stood together, not as master and possession, but as husband and wife, ruler and queen. Partners in the truest sense, their improbable journey from auction block to royal union complete, yet in many ways just beginning.